Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Pastors Roundtable. I'm your host, Ryan Latham, and I'm excited to bring this episode as we talk a little bit about communicating to your people as you think about and consider reopening. I'm here with my friend Matt, who is a lead pastor at Mechanicsville Christian Center in Mechanicsville, Virginia, and right outside of Richmond, right outside of the capital. It's a little small town outside of the capital area there. So great church, doing a lot of great stuff. So Matt, why don't you just take a second here and introduce yourself to us?
Hey, my name is Matt Hoole. I'm a pastor at Mechanicsville Christian Center in Mechanicsville, Virginia, and been the lead pastor since the end of January. So just in time for the COVID-19 crisis. And been enjoying everything so far. It's been crazy.
Yeah, and before that, you were on staff for quite a while in a different role. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I came on at MCC about 11 years ago as the worship and fine arts pastor. So did that solely in that role for about 9 years. And then about 2 years ago, became what we called the senior associate pastor. And that came out of really some kind of a health crisis that our pastor was walking through. And so they brought me on as kind of a number two guy, but to functionally be leading most of what was happening in the church. And just kind of create a succession plan for leadership. So yeah, that was kind of how I rolled into that. And then 2 years of that, and then now I'm in the lead role officially. So
yeah, so Matt, we've been walking through that timeline with you guys. So it just was so healthy the way you guys did it, organizationally, internally, also externally, as the front end talking with people. I mean, really about a 2-year process of that succession plan. And so honestly, man, it was just one of the healthiest ones I've seen. And so just talk about that. What were some of the elements of that? I know that it was something you guys had talked about for a while, but then the health issues kind of accelerated all of that. So just kind of unpack that for us a little bit.
Yeah, we felt like just, in our own personal lives, we felt like God was calling us into a lead pastor role. And we thought it would be sometime around this time. And so we kind of been aiming that direction just in a personal sense. But the board came to us, this is September of 17, and just told us, hey, we'd like you to consider this promotion into this number two role and kind of describe what that could be. And so we love our pastor. Carter Goolsby had been here over 30 years, really just given his life and career to this church, and so we had a great relationship with him and knew that we would be able to work with him in this season and just really be in a place of leading, but also in a place of submission to his leadership. And so we felt like we could do that in a healthy way. And we felt like he was the kind of guy that could also do that. I don't think every senior pastor would be able to do what he did.
Yeah,
he was
sure.
So he was so humble and just was like happy to really champion me as the guy leading out front and really to take a back seat to that. While at the same time, meeting with me weekly and just kind of, staying connected. And so, yeah, it was probably as healthy as I could possibly imagine it being. We just had a great relationship through the whole thing. Certainly moments of tension, not with him probably, but more just like around the, some of the uniqueness of it. We had moments where it was hard and we had to navigate some things with our leadership kind of internally and with people even in our church that didn't understand what was happening. And part of that was because we weren't able to communicate some things because he was walking through his own physical kind of journey, dealing with some sickness that he was dealing with. And so, so some of that was a little bit obscured for our people and hard to understand what was happening. So we just did our best to honor him, to honor our church, and then walk in submission to our board. And they really took a pretty central role in that whole process. And so we have some phenomenal guys on the board, and that was very healthy as well. And just able to really navigate it in a way that was, I think, wise and honoring. And it's just it was a great situation. So we did 2 years of that. So functionally, I was leading the staff, setting the course as far as vision. Most of kind of taking the primary role in the communication part, and at the same time still overseeing all the worship and fine arts world. And so kind of wearing a couple hats and juggling some of those things. But we had a great team on our staff, great pastoral team. And so a lot of the burden was just able to be shared, and it was a good season for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it just seems like it was so healthy. And I know that you've been making some just kind of not major changes, but just little points of change, emphasis changes. When you did that, I think in our conversation, you talked about how it was so great for you to be able to have the support of previously pastor been there for 30 years as you're making these subtle little emphasis changes to still have the support. Want to talk about how that helped you?
Yeah. As far as the changes, we made, like you said, subtle ones. Some were maybe a little bigger cultural changes for us at the church, but we stayed true to a lot of who we are and who we've been from the beginning. So, so some of what kind of coming into this role, we had been through a season where, and this is probably even somewhat because of what was happening that we didn't even know about with our pastor. We had been in a season about 4 years long that was we were having decline, and kind of we're a 45-year-old church this year, so we're kind of in that generational shift anyway. So we'd seen 5 to 8% decline for about 4 years straight, and so coming into the role, I knew that we had to change some of what we were doing strategically. We had to become more evangelistic in our approach. I knew that we had to see people coming to Christ, and baptisms, and people that were kind of coming, on the front end of their relationship with God, because we had a lot of people that were on the other end of that had been, around for a long time, were strong, healthy disciples, and so we began to shift a little bit of what we were doing and be a little more evangelistic and intentional in that way. And so that was going to be how we were communicating, also doing some things like, like an At the Movie series, and some things that were maybe a little more controversial for a few of our people, but things that were able to connect with people that weren't, church people, weren't Christ followers. And so we saw really tremendous fruit and then quite a bit of growth over the last couple of years. And a lot of it was due to that slight shift in our focus. And so, so we've seen, about 25 to 30% growth over the last couple of years. And it's been really good. And a lot of new families, new people, new salvations. And so all those things have been really healthy. And our pastor was definitely right with us and championed us the whole way through it, and I'm sure he took some heat probably from a few people that weren't super happy, but he was right there with us and just loving what was happening. So yeah, again, a lot of credit, most of the credit goes to him. So I appreciate all that he did and has done for us.
Yeah, so cool, so cool. And then you get officially voted in at the end of January, celebrate, but right after that celebration, boom, we get right into this pandemic here. So talk about that a little bit. How was that?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. It was a pretty quick and sudden turn for us. And so I think, for me as really a pretty new leader in this role, at least, just trying to navigate, probably the communication piece was the biggest part that we just knew, hey, out of the gate, we've got to make sure we're communicating to our people more than they probably, than we would think they even need. And so we came right out with a quick video the first week, and we made the decision on Friday, we're going to close this Sunday. And so that was the 15th, I believe, of that Sunday in March. And so all of that was really quick, really sudden. And, but we felt like it was the responsible thing to do, the right thing to do. And so we went ahead and closed down, put a quick video out just to say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. We're going to be online. These are our service times. And then we just began to adjust like everybody else, how do we do church online? And we had been growing a lot in that area over the last 6 months to a year. We had been intentionally working on our social media and kind of that online presence, but we were not one of these churches that has like an online campus and all those, the bells and whistles of that. So, so we've been kind of crawling through it like most churches have been, trying to learn and grow and, purchase a few things here and there to kind of help us to do a better job. And, but, I think our church has adjusted really well. They've been very engaged online, which has been awesome. So, lots of comments, and we've done a couple of prayer meetings online, which has been interesting through Zoom. But again, same thing, very well engaged, very well attended. And so I think overall, the engagement's been really strong online for us, and we were pleasantly surprised by how well we were able to navigate and kind of pivot into that at the beginning of the season. And and like everybody else, we're just trying to learn and grow and get better at it as we're going until things begin to open up a little wider.
Yeah, that's great. So, have you guys moved like Zoom groups for different age groups, things like that? What are some of the things you guys are doing there?
Yeah. So we, our small groups went to a Zoom format, and we've done, quite a few of those. Our students have done a midweek Zoom kind of call, and I think actually Instagram for them. They've done an Instagram grouping set up there. And then our kids have been part of our Sunday morning service. So if you watch our services, we have a kids thing at the end of every Sunday. And our team has done a phenomenal job just adjusting there and really creating like a little bit of like a kind of a kids clubhouse kind of feel. They made a little set, they've been working with, and kind of done like a little Pee Wee's Playhouse or something like that. It's kind of old school, but
That's awesome.
Pee Wee's Playhouse meets Blue's Clues, something, I don't know. It's been a really fun. Yeah, they've just crushed it, and we've been so happy with how they've adjusted to that and been so creative. I mean, we use orange curriculum, and so they've gotten a lot of ideas from that, and that's been very helpful. So thank God we kind of had that tool, and they've just taken ideas and recreated things, and it's been awesome. So yeah, that's kind of been our online setup right now.
That's great. That's great. So, Matt, one thing you guys, I feel like really just did an excellent job was in your communication leading up to the reopening. So let's talk about the communication for a little while. So let's go back before you guys reopened. What were some of those internal conversations that you guys were having, and who were those with? Was that with board members? Did you create like a separate committee? What were some of those conversations, and who were those with as you were deciding when are we going to open up?
Yeah. So we did our first pastors meeting with our pastoral team around a Zoom table. So we were all on Zoom, but we were talking through it, and that was probably right about 4 weeks ago. We did that first initial meeting. I had a list of questions to walk through. Really, kind of what does the flow look like for a guest when we reopen? What are the possibilities as far as restrictions that might be lifted? So we developed really, I think probably 3 plans based on different crowd sizes and how they would possibly do that. So we started with like a 50-person crowd if they open that wide, and we decided at that point we're not going to open up. We're going to stay online and try to do that very well. If they did 100 people in different spaces, then we knew at that point we could open up with a couple different spaces in our facility. And if they went to 250, then we knew that at that point we could go back in the sanctuary, space things out, and then possibly do 3 services if that was the limit. And so that was kind of how we kind of set it up. So we run about, in our building 11.5 right now. It's about 11:50 before all this started on a Sunday.
And your main auditorium seats, you said max is out about 1,000.
About 1,000, yeah, about 1,000 adults in that room, and that's a tight room. So in reality, in 2020 America, probably like 750, 800 is probably about max.
You gotta have your Bible space, and your man
exactly,
space.
You gotta have all that space around you.
Right.
So we knew that, when they opened up in our state at 50% capacity for churches, that we could easily put 300, 350 in our room and be comfortably spaced out in a way that would be appropriate, I think, for the requirements there. So we just kind of developed a plan based on different crowd sizes, and then along with that, we answered all the questions. How do we create a touchless service? So communion, individual things, and how we're going to hand those out, and no offering plates being passed. And we're a traditional evangelical church, right? We're not super progressive. We still had like a greeting time where everyone shakes hands and hugs necks and all those things. So we decided which things we could not do any longer in this current setup. And then we just went down a list, how does that look as far as hospitality, as far as greeters? How do they greet people? How do we do parking lot ministries? We came on these 3 values, and I think we stole them from, it might've been Home Depot actually. But the 3 values we took were flexibility, proactivity, and safety. So those 3 values were going to be our values as we kind of stepped into our reentry. And then we just made the commitment, if we're going to err on one side or the other, we're always going to err towards safety. And so when people ask us, why aren't you opening wider? Why aren't you doing all these things? We're just going to tell them one of our main values, our main value is going to be the safety of our people. And so
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of people that have certain opinions, and definitely think that it's all whatever, it's all a big hoax or whatever it is.
I love that. I love
Um,
that because that's a very temporary thing. It's not your permanent,
Yep.
but it's a very temporary thing. And you're saying, hey, in the moment, right now, that's not who we're going to be forever. But right now, here are our three main values. I love that. So good.
Yeah, so that was helpful. So once we had that initial discussion, I sent all those notes out to our board to let them see that and kind of look at it. We talked about it in a meeting that we had maybe a week and a half later with the board. So we kind of talked through all those things, and everyone felt, I think, pretty on board with the concept. And then when they opened up, it was kind of, we had just a few days when they made that decision to open things wider. We had to make a pretty quick call. Okay, are we opening this Sunday or the next? And we felt like we had a pretty good grasp on what it was going to look like. And definitely kudos to our team. I think that they had kind of really put their work in to put on paper how it was going to look. And we had most of the pieces already in place. And so we had already discussed signage around our facility. We did a whole bunch of signage that was going to be temporary signage, on sandwich boards and all that. Just with, things like, social distancing and, wave at people, we're not going to hug, and all those things, we did. And so we had our plan pretty much in place, and we felt like, hey, we can pull the trigger on this and just go for it. So I was talking to pastors in our area. So some opened up and some didn't. And so I talked to some that were opening up and just tried to bounce things off them and make sure that we weren't, too far out in front. Our goal kind of had been from the beginning, we don't want to be the last ones, and we don't want to be the first ones. And so this was a bit of a departure from that. We were kind of stepping out first, and it's always a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to you, and you said, I figured everyone was going to be, and I looked around, and they weren't.
Gosh, man. Yeah, I thought everyone would jump right on it. I was surprised. But yeah, we were some of the first ones to kind of open up and get rolling. But again, I felt like we were ready. And so, and the governor of our state gave the go ahead. And so we want to be as responsible and safe as we possibly can. And at the same time, our people, at least a good percentage of them, seemed to be ready to roll, and they were excited to get back to church. So
yeah. Now, so did you send out any like church surveys, or how did you get kind of the pulse? How are you getting the pulse of, are people ready to come back?
Yeah, I think that we didn't do a survey. We were seeing online for sure people were saying things, and I seemed to be excited about the idea of coming back to church when things were beginning to open up. I talked to our board about it, and I'm trusting those guys. They are the in our world kind of the elected officials of our church, and so I'm asking them, how do they feel? What are they hearing? And everybody in the room was on board, and felt like this is the right thing for us to do. And we prayed into it. And, I asked those guys to pray even ahead of time before we met. And so they were praying into that. And all of them, I think, kind of felt a pretty strong peace about moving forward. And so we just trusted that the Holy Spirit was going to help us out and lead us even in those decisions. So a lot of things are practical, and some things, we hope that as we're making decisions, it seems good to us and to the Holy Spirit. And so, we went ahead and stepped into those waters.
That's great. That's great. I love that. So talk about some of the communication. So we talked about before, now talk about the kind of the front end of your communication, some of the stuff that you guys were doing with your video, emails, all that kind of stuff, which we're going to include in the show notes, some of the videos and samples and things like that. But go ahead and walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so we had been doing a weekly email. Some of those included videos, some were just more informational. So our people had kind of been already in that habit of receiving an update of some sort from our church. And so once we were ready to roll, we did a video that kind of shared, kind of the invite, how it was going to look. We did a registration on our website. And so we talked about the registration process. You're going to see it if you look at it, but I did kind of a walkthrough of our facility and just walk people around some of the differences, how they were going to park in one area, how we were only going to have doors open on one end of the building. And all that was to help us kind of manage the capacity thing. We wanted to make sure we were counting every person that walked in, so we weren't, overfilling our areas at all. And then, we did a lot of sanitization stuff. And so we did like sanitizer, masks, gloves, all those were on site, ready for people if they wanted them. I talked about the way we're going to space out in the sanctuary and all those things. Just kind of walk through the whole process for our people, so they would come in
one
knowing
thing,
what to expect.
we'll go one thing specific about your building that, a lot of people have as well is you have bolted seats, right? So you can't like just spread them out ahead of time. And so you specifically even talked about that and how you labeled them. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we labeled every other pew. We have like a big red square on every other pew. We have traditional pews, and so that was, of course, to maintain the distance there. And it's around 6 foot. It's probably not exact, but even with that, trying to stagger people out so they aren't right behind somebody or right in front of somebody. And so yes, we just marked all of our pews so people would know where they could and could not sit. And then we had our ushers help that process as well and kind of point people as they're coming in. We have somebody at the door greeting them, somebody down the aisle, kind of helping them find places they can sit. That's how we did that.
That's great. That's great. And then that was kind of like a social media type video that you also emailed out, but then you did some follow-up emails as well. Yeah.
So in our first video, I did some things a little bit softer than I did in the second. So when it came to wearing masks, I said, we want it to be comfortable for you. And so if you want to wear a mask, do that. If you don't, that's totally fine. So I kind of put a pretty soft sell on that. Well, we did a follow-up video for all those who registered that was emailed to them on Friday evening, I believe, last week. And it was a little bit stronger in that. We're not mandating it. It's not mandated by our governor or anything. So we said we're not mandating it, but we are highly encouraging anybody to wear a mask. And then we also said, if you're in that part of our society that is seen as more susceptible to this virus, then we're going to ask you to consider staying home and don't feel like you have to be at church, watch online with us. So I did in that second email, it was about probably a minute and a half long, something like that. And I scripted that one a little bit stronger just to really tell people, hey, don't feel any kind of guilt about staying home. If you're in that demographic that is more susceptible, please consider staying home, watching online. Reminded people we're not going to have kids ministries happening. So we kind of just reminded people that are, some of these things that are going to be different, just to create a little stronger sense of expectations that it's not going to be a normal Sunday. And so I think everyone early on was thinking that we were going to come back together and it was going to be this big hoopla. We're going to be dancing in the aisles. And we're just trying to help people understand that, hey, it's going to be different. It's going to look and feel much different.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So what have you learned? What advice would you give to somebody who's considering maybe, they're in the states that I haven't opened up yet? What tips or what advice would you give them as they're considering reopening?
Yeah, I would say, you certainly want to be responsible. I think in every way. I think even the optics of that, you just want to make sure that people, when they look at what you're doing, whether they're in your church or outside of it, that they know that, hey, that church is covering all their bases and doing the best they can do to create a safe environment for their people. And so make sure that you're, representing that safety part, that safety value really strongly. And then, just prepare your space, prepare your people. I would say really set expectations for what it will and will not be, because it's going to be different for sure. Mm-hmm. And then just do a good job of trying to really create an environment where people can still encounter God's presence, still learn how to live out his purposes, and have a great church experience while it's very different at the same time. One thing we did that's very practical, and just things like this though, we had our music louder in the foyer than we normally do. And that's a small thing, but we intentionally did that because we knew that our foyer space was going to feel a lot different. We have a very lively kind of atmosphere before services at our church. You've been there, so you've seen that. And
a lot of people
donuts,
hanging out, talking,
tons of people.
Donuts, yeah.
Yep. So we had, of course, no coffee, no donuts. All those things were very different. And so we cranked the music up a little bit to where when they walk in, it's still going to feel lively and still have a sense of expectation kind of in the air,
as opposed to walking into a death zone.
Exactly. So we knew it was going to be much quieter and feel much different. So we just intentionally created a little bit more lively environment in the ways that we could while other things couldn't happen. So just stuff like that. Just kind of think through the flow of your service. What are their first encounters going to be? We did people out in the road with signs welcoming people when they came back. And so same thing, where can we create those hospitality wins because we can't do other ones. And so just kind of think through that guest flow, their experience, and then just be ready, for whatever you get. Yeah.
That's great. So let's talk about the new normal. What are you seeing? What are you thinking through as you guys begin to prepare for the new normal?
Yeah. So we're going to sit in the place we're in for a while, I think, which is where, we're going to have we have 2 services happening right now, and we can grow those to a certain point. If we hit a threshold numbers wise, or we can't space out appropriately, then we'll add a 3rd service there. So we have that plan already in place, and I think that'd be pretty easy for us to do. So I think the new norms going forward, we may at some point do a family oriented service, and it might even be around tables. We might do like tables in our gym area where families can be together, but still have enough distance. And that would be more of a kid friendly environment, but not necessarily a kids service, not like an FX experience or something like that. We really want to have everybody have their own experience that's really, approachable to each person. So we may adjust there, but I think, going back to those early values, flexibility is going to be part of our value system in this season. So we're going to do our best to be flexible. If we need to make adjustments, we'll do that. We'll be proactive. When we see that we can begin to move forward in some ways that might make us a little more effective, then we're just going to do it. We're going to do our best to stay in the guidelines and also move forward wherever we can to be more effective. So I don't see anything changing drastically in our end for a while. We don't have kids or student ministries happening right now. So I'm interested to see what happens in the student world. So we're still kind of trying to figure that out. How do we do that and maintain some safety guidelines while kids are not going to always abide by the rules you give them. So yeah, so I think there could be a change at some point there, but we're not sure how it looks yet. So we'll see.
Yeah. So let's jump ahead. I mean, how do you feel like some of these digital things that you've begun to implement, which ones are you kind of talking about? Man, we think that these are going to stick for us. Is that continuing live streaming? Is that continuing Zoom? What are some of those things that you've added digitally that you feel like are going to be part of your, foreseeable future?
Yeah, one of the things when we kind of went through that initial meeting, we said, what's going to change, what's going to stay for a while, and then what's going to go on that we want to continue to do long term, and maximizing technology was part of that discussion. How are we going to continue to maximize technology in the future? And so I think we will do more Zoom meetings. I think we'll have Zoom groups, that will probably be a long-term commitment for us. The online presence thing, we'll continue to do that. We already were doing that, but I would say we were doing it much more poorly. It wasn't a strong focus for us. And you really have to do it well, you have to give up some things for that. And so even right now, when our people come in, we have a little intro video on Sunday morning. We started it this last Sunday. And part of that intro dialogue is the service is going to look a little bit different. You may see some camera guys that are in new places and you haven't seen them before. So we have a guy on a wireless camera that's walking around by the stage, and that wasn't part of our culture in the past. So what we do see is that
before COVID, am I correct in saying that is basically just a single camera, pretty much a raw feed from the board straight?
Yeah, so we had 2 cameras, that were kind of both in the same direction. And so we can go wide and narrow and that kind of thing, but very limited. And so during the COVID season, we were able to, add a few a few cameras in, and get some different angles and, a wireless and all that kind of stuff. So, we thought coming out of this season, it's an easy place to pivot for us. We've already got it there. People see the immediate need and why it's a good thing now. So our thought going forward is that once people are kind of acclimated to this is the new norm, then we can probably keep it in place and really move forward in our online, production piece. So yes, I think we'll keep that in place. I think that'll be a long-term direction we'll go. So yeah, I think that's a big piece of it is going to be maximizing technology and just making small pivots wherever we can. I don't know if we'll go to like an online campus setup, but we are talking about that because again, any place that you can make a small pivot that's going to produce, lasting results, this is a great season to do it, And so we're thinking, how do we do that in a longer term? Yeah.
I love it. All right, Matt, last question. I like to always end with this question. So, you've been in ministry for a while, you worship pastor, and now a brand new official lead pastor. I'm sure this is one that you got to be wrestling with. So, Matt, what are some things that bring you renewal in your own life?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in this season, hanging out with my wife and kids has been a big part of that, and I'm sure that probably everybody says that. But that's been a real life-giving thing during this season, especially. For me, I go on a lot of prayer walks, and that's definitely part of my spiritual rhythm. That and this has been a great season for that. I have a lot more flexibility right now than I've had in the past, and so taking long walks in my neighborhood and put my AirPods in so that people don't think I'm talking to myself when I'm walking around. And but yeah, just praying on long walks has been a great thing. And then just on the more entertainment side, I guess I love sitting down at night and watching a movie or watching some Office episodes or something like that. And so that's something we definitely do to relax and refresh.
All right, you're a musician, so what's your go-to stuff? What's some go-to songs, or what are you jamming out to?
Yeah, it's funny, man. I don't listen to a ton of music. I should more than I do. So yeah, it's been that way for a long time. I listen to more podcasts than I do music by far. So
well, I mean, you're preparing to be a lead pastor. There you go.
Yeah, I guess that's probably part of it. So yeah, so I listen to definitely some worship stuff. I'm not a big top 40 Christian music guy, but I definitely like a lot of the worship stuff that's coming out. And then on a more entertainment level, I like John Mayer a lot, so I listen to John Mayer.
I can see it. I can see it.
Just enjoying some good music. So
that's awesome.
That's probably my go-tos right now.
I love it. Well, hey, Matt, thanks so much for being on this episode. And we look forward to bringing you guys some more episodes here real shortly. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It was great to be here, man. Love what you're doing. Keep it up.